Okay, so you watching on video, we're looking at this depiction of something that happened in Boston. Come up with what? According to this, Wahapa. Yes.
The innocent colonists were just doing their thing when the British came over and were like, trying to take over.
Okay, so you're claiming the colonists were just innocent. Why did you make that conclusion? How did you reach that conclusion?
They don't have guns, and like the British aren't like fighting with them. They're just like shooting them from outside.
Okay, very good. So there's no weapon here, and there's clearly space between the colonists and the British.
They're all just like grouped around.
Very good. It looks like an organized act. Now, how do you know that?
Because they're all in the
Well, let's just think about this as far as your Blue Book essay is concerned, because what you're doing right now is verbally doing what you have to in written form do later. She just made a claim that the British acted in an organized way, and now I'm going to say, okay, prove it.
They're in a straight line, and they had like a conductor in the back.
A conductor doing it, yeah, exactly, with his baton. Very good. They're in a line. Very good. There's somebody behind them, leaning slightly forward. I think that's a sword. That's probably, I mean, I don't need to know a name here, but the commanding officer, exactly. And you can see actually his mouth is slightly open as if he's saying,
Fire.
fire. This is a true story. There was once a French, a British, and an American in World War II in a German prison camp, and they devised a way to escape because they were about to be executed. So they hatched a plan like, all right, listen, when I'm up there, I'll just shout something. And by the way, if you know this, just shut your mouth. Okay, so the British guy comes up there, and the German's like, ready, aim! And the British guy says, tornado! And the German's like, what? And the British guy runs away, and the French and the American are like, oh my God, it worked. So they get the French guy up there, and the German's, ready, aim! And the French guy says, hurricane! And the German's like, what? And he runs away. And the American's like, wow. So the American goes up there, and the German, ready, aim! And the American yells, fire! True story. Or not. Okay. Anything else that we want to conclude? Go ahead.
Well, I said that the British soldiers fired at the colonists because of a riot that broke out.
Okay, so do you see a riot? Or are you using your knowledge of what happened? I mean, maybe you do see a riot. Do we see a riot?
Not now that they're shooting at them, but
Is there anything on this document that indicates that there's a riot going on? Just want to be careful about conclusions made based on your historical knowledge of what happened here versus what the document is saying. I don't know that this document indicates that there's a riot. I mean, it looks like these guys are, I don't know, Christmas shopping, maybe?
Point out the dog.
There's a puppy. The dog's right here, by the way.
Oh,
Right in the front. Go ahead.
the only reason I said that was because they were kind of all like grouped together.
They do seem to be grouped together. Okay, fine.
It's like,
Or like protecting themselves from being shot at.
There's a lot of smoke, which indicates that the guns fired at the same time, right? Which would indicate some sort of an organized attack. In the background, by the way, if you'll notice, this is historically inaccurate. This is in Boston. This is the Boston Massacre. This is Liberty Hall. Does anyone know where Liberty Hall is?
Not in Boston.
Massachusetts.
It's in Philadelphia. So the maker of this depiction, by the way, that guy's name, the guy that made this, was a guy by the name of Paul Revere, who was a member of the Sons of Liberty. He's the one that got on the horsey and said, the British are coming, the British are coming. And he made this. This guy was a fanatic. He was a hardcore patriot. He took any opportunity to paint the British as the worst ever and the Americans as the best ever. So he's got this version of what happened in one day in, let's see, the Boston Massacre 1770. So 6 years before the Declaration of Independence, this is going on. And now I'm going to contrast that version with this depiction of the same event. This is another depiction, but you don't see this one. You all see this one all the time. This one is another depiction. And what I want you to do is contrast What's different about the two? And if you get my little exercise here, it's Zinn and Schweikert and Allen all over again. And then what you're going to have to do, and we'll do a quick little exercise, is you have to decide which one is accurate. And the only way to do that is to go to the historical evidence. And I'm going to share with you some things that we know, factually know about that. And then you'll determine which is the more credible historical version. And then you get to do that with Zinn versus Schweikert and Allen. Same thing. All right, so again, if you want to write this down, that's fine. I'm not collecting it, but if you just want to mentally do this, that's fine too. What's different?
That said, there's a lot more smoke.
Oh, look, I mean, the circle, next to the tower on that one.
Can
The circle on
you
it.
see how that one's like a wide
Were you talking?
No.
Well, you're looking right at me like you were waiting for me to answer. I didn't know you were talking. Shall we begin? One point at a time, please. Anyone want to make an observation? Like, here's something different. Go ahead.
It looks like they actually are rioting this time.
Okay, the Americans seem to be a little bit more aggressive. I mean, that's an American, and is that a turkey leg? As in, here, British, I have some food for you. No, that's a big old club. Okay, this guy has his hand on the British bayonet as it's getting stabbed into his neck. It looks like. This, by the way, this is an actual historical person. You are looking at who is credited as the first casualty of the American Revolution, who happened to be an African American. His name was Crispus Attucks. He's the first acknowledged casualty of the American Revolution. So honors and glory be to him. This British guy is, he's injured, obviously. He's been knocked down. Do you see anyone injured over here? There's no attacking by the Americans over here, but over here, I mean, there's a riot going on. Okay, very good. Anyone else?
There's also no officer like not fire.
Doesn't seem to be any officer in the background commanding the fire. I'll keep going here. If you look over here, you'll notice that there's people behind also in chaos. It appears over here like all the Americans are over here and all the British are over here, and they're firing into the American crowd. Here, the British are in the middle of a storm. There's a riot going on, and they're in the middle of it. Now imagine you are an American soldier, and you're in Afghanistan, and you're in the capital of Afghanistan, and surrounding you are all these strangely dressed, strange-speaking people, and they're yelling, and you don't understand a word they're saying because they're speaking Arabic, but they're approaching you, and it's both sides, and you have Mr. M16. What would you do? Now, I'm not saying you're going to ramble. I'm America! Okay? But it's hard to criticize unless you're there. Do we want to make any other conclusions here? So now we have two competing versions of something that happened in 1770. And now I'm going to give you some historical, actual, factual information, some historical evidence to refute one of these and support one of these. And that's what you're going to do with Zinn and Schweikert and Allen. We know this one's the more accurate version. We know it. And the reason we know it is these soldiers were put on trial in Boston by an American jury. There were Americans on the jury. The attorney that represented these six was an American. His name was John Adams. He would become our second president. Of the British soldiers that were put on trial, one was found guilty, and he was found guilty of some minor firing or something like that. All the others were found not guilty because, anyone want to guess?
They didn't do it.
Well, yeah, they did. Oh, they did do this.
The Americans did it both.
Yeah, provoked, self-defense. You have the right of self-defense. And they were all found not guilty, except one. One was found guilty of something. I can't exactly remember. So clearly, this is the more historically accurate version, and yet, this is the one that most Americans saw. What we have here is an example of
Communism.
colonial exaggeration of British abusive behavior. Colonial exaggeration. They exaggerated. Fake news, right? You hear it all the time today. This is one reason why the media is so openly criticized by one side or the other, right? Either Trump manipulated the 2016 election in cooperation with the Russians, or he didn't. But if you only watch certain media, he definitely did it. And if you only watch other media, he definitely didn't do it. I'll give you another example of the power of media. It happened yesterday. President Trump went to the United Nations and gave a speech. And during that speech at the United Nations in New York, he said that he had done more as president than any other president ever. And the entire crowd laughed at him. They all started laughing at him, which he's not used to. He's used to going to rallies where the entire crowd is pro-Trump. And so when he makes claims like that, the entire crowd's like, yeah, make America great again. Now he's speaking at the United Nations where the crowd is not so willing to accept his claims. And I'm not saying his claims are right or wrong. I'm just saying they're not so willing to accept what he claims. Okay, so we have Trump making a claim, the crowd laughs. If you were to watch certain channels last night, you would have heard the claim and they cut out the laughing. The media cut out the laughing because those are pro-Trump media who want you to think the crowd loved it. So they cut that out. Well, that's pretty powerful and manipulative stuff. That's fake news. Now, I've just criticized conservative media for doing that. I will take a turn at criticizing liberal media. Same thing. Does the name Trayvon Martin mean anything to anybody here? Trayvon Martin. Trayvon Martin was the black kid who was shot and killed by a guy by the name of Zimmerman in Florida 3-4 years ago, something like that, maybe a little bit more. And the guy that shot and killed Trayvon Martin, a black teenager, called the cops, and the media got a hold of that call and played it. And the call goes something like this. It's the guy that shot Trayvon Martin before he actually shoots him. He calls the cops and says, yeah, I see this black guy. He's probably up to no good. I'm going to go investigate. Okay, something like that. But they doctored that video. They cut out important parts. Because if you just heard that video, you would think that this guy's a racist who's looking to find some black kid, shoot him or something like that, right? He offers up, yeah, I see a black guy. I'm going to go investigate. But what they cut out was the 911 caller asking, can you describe this person? Is he black? Is he white? What is he? And then Zimmerman responds, he's black. He didn't just offer it up. He answered a question, but the media cut that part out. This is the same as what I just told you. Media cut parts out so you think a certain way. That's what spin is. Are any of you in civics right now? Anybody in civics? Nobody's here in civics? Oh, never mind.
We had to take civics last year so we could take this class.
That's right. Yes.
Yes.
Lucky you. Okay. Any questions or comments about this? Okay. Let's keep going. What we have here is a violent act, but then they were put on trial and they were found mostly not guilty. In other words, the Americans demonstrated at this time, let's just chill. Hey, Britain, let's calm down. And the British responded in kind. The British repealed every tax. Do you remember the 5 taxes? 5 things that were taxed? Glass, paint, paper, lead, tea. They removed all the taxes except one. Just the one on tea. They kept the tax on tea. Now, we know this from yesterday, right? What the British expected was that the Americans would say, well, thank you, Britain. Thank you for removing all of those taxes. We appreciate it. We appreciate your act of goodwill. We've stepped back. You've stepped back. Let's all just chill. That's what the British expected. But we know. What do we know?
They thought you're weak.
You're weak. You British are weak. It's working. Our resistance is working. So you're going to keep that tax on tea, huh? So you are looking on the right at the response of the Americans. Not a step back, a step forward. This is a drawing of the Boston Tea Party.
That was a picture.
So it says here the Tea Act was kept just to remind colonists, hey, we're still your boss. So we're going to keep this tax on tea. If you don't want to pay the tax, don't buy tea. The British passed something called the Declaratory Act. The same time they passed the Tea Act, they kept the tax on tea. They also passed another law which said that we have the right to tax you, colonies. We are your boss. We can do this, right? The declaratory. But in response, the Sons of Liberty, these are the Sons of Liberty, and you might be thinking, no, those are Indians. They disguised themselves as Indians to set the Indians up so that the British would think Indians did it. Because boy, do Indians hate tea. The British won, by the way. This is actually quite common. Later on during World War II, you'll learn about, anyone ever heard of the Battle of the Bulge? Battle of the Bulge was a huge battle during World War II. And what happened was that these Germans, the Americans were advancing, and somehow the Germans stayed put, and the Americans advanced right by them. And then the Germans went that way. How the Germans do it? Does anyone know? As Americans. They disguised themselves as American soldiers. So the Americans passed right through saying, hey, where are you from? I am from Minnesota! Oh, all right, me too. And they were fooled. Very common. They snuck on board the boat. They dumped a bunch of tea into the harbor. It's an act of terrorism. Now, no one died. It's not like they crashed planes into the Twin Towers. Let me ask you this. Let's say that we read in the news tomorrow that Al-Qaeda blows up a series of American trucks that are in Afghanistan, destroying all the ordnance that's on board. But no one died. Is that terrorism?
Mm-hmm.
No one died, though. Does it matter? Okay. Then why isn't this terrorism? Why is it that Americans look at the Boston Tea Party and swell out with pride, like, damn right, we dumped that tea? The British look at this as an act of terrorism. The British look at this as an act of American aggression, but we look at it as, The British look at this as an act of terrorism, and we look at it as, You see the importance of history? You see the importance of Zinn's version of Columbus versus Schweikart and Allen's version of Columbus? That's the point of this class, is that there are competing versions of history, and this isn't an easy task, you are tasked with deciding which one is the more credible. And by the way, you are charged with this for the rest of your life. You will turn it to one channel and see a version of Trump that says, hooray, Trump, and you will turn it to another channel and it'll be a version that says he's the worst thing ever. Well, how do you know? How do you know which is real? You got to look at the evidence. You got to look at actual, factual evidence to determine it. So kind of a life skill that we're learning. Anyway, last note on this one, and that is this. The British responded to this. So you have a series of events. Boston Massacre. By the way, I think something like 7 Americans died, right? So clearly a massacre. See, even the name is loaded. I mean, it's sad. 7 people died. Massacre? I mean, when I hear massacre, I think Jews, World War II. That's a massacre. 7 people died? Sad. I don't know about massacre. It's a loaded
Well,
word.
at the time, wouldn't this be like a massacre?
This?
No, not this.
The Boston Massacre?
Yeah.
I don't know. I think 6 is 6, right? 6 people died. Again, that's sad. Massacre, right? What the Americans are doing is controlling the narrative. They make everyone think it's massacre. And I'm not here to say, but it clearly wasn't. Very sad for those 6. One thing that always struck me, I had a professor in college, really excellent professor, and what he said that really hit me was this. Something like this. The Holocaust was dreadful. It was an awful, awful event. But when someone dies in a family, that is just as traumatic for that family as everybody that went through the Holocaust for each one of those families. It's just the same for the individuals, right? And the reason I'm pointing that out is because the Boston Massacre, they had families. Those families mourned. Very sad on a smaller scale. So I don't want to diminish what happened That's possible. Okay. Anyway, how did the British respond? They passed a series of laws that collectively were known as the Coercive Acts. What does coercive mean? Is it pleasant? If one of you to walk in here and say, Mr. Potter, you're really coercive, would I say like, ha, thanks, you are too? And then we go to lunch?
They're like manipulative.
It's sort of a loaded word, right? Just like Boston Massacre is a loaded word, coercive acts is a loaded word. Parliament passed a series of laws and they called them the coercive acts. As in, hey, America, we're done. We're done stepping back. We've just passed a series of laws called the coercive acts. They're not pleasant. In fact, the Americans, I think, called them the intolerable acts, as in intolerable, as in we can't stand them. Questions? Ready? Let's learn what they were. So the coercive acts and the intolerable acts, same series of laws. They're the same thing. The British called them coercive. We called them intolerable. They're the same series of laws. There were 5, I believe. Law number 1, shut down Boston Harbor until all that tea was picked up. You pick up that tea. Now, good luck, because when you dump tea into a harbor, it dissolves. So how are you going to do that? They closed the harbor. By the way, you might think you're looking at a cartoon, but no, that's how everything looked back then. King George actually looked like that. That's an actual photo. British boats looked like that. This is an actual photograph from a satellite back then. That's a wave. You might think, no, that's a bird. But birds are the other way. Waves, birds. Good news, I saw a dog this morning. Okay, law number 2. What was very common at this time were called town meetings. In fact, it's still a tradition in the Northeast, the Boston area, town meetings. But the British realized something. All you do at these town meetings is agree to stop buying British goods. You plot. Well, we'll just outlaw meetings. You can have them one time a year. And at that meeting, you can only plan parades. I added that part. Right? If all you do is plot, then we're going to not let you meet. And of course, that ended meetings, didn't it?
No.
Of course not. It didn't end meetings. So what's the point? There you go. If you don't have a law to make it illegal, then they're not breaking the law. It's the same as a speed limit. The logic of why it's speed limits. If you make a speed limit, the only people that are going to obey the speed limit are people that obey the law. But if you don't have the law, you can't arrest the people. You got to have the law so that you can arrest the people. Same thing. Okay. Law number 3. From now on, all trials involving British soldiers, we'll bring them over here and put them on trial in London. Yeah, those 6 got a fair trial at the Boston Massacre. Okay, we'll give you that one. But from now on. Now you think about that. Are they going to get a fair trial? Probably not in their benefit, right? So imagine this. Imagine there's an American soldier accused by the Afghani government of some awful act, killing innocent civilians. And the Afghan government gets him and holds him and puts him on trial. Is he going to get a fair trial? Debatable, right? But what if the United States said, "Now we'll do it," and we put him on trial over here in some military court? Would he get a fair trial then? See the dilemma here? No matter what, somebody's going to say, that's not fair. So that's exactly what the Americans said. Law number 4. And again, you might think, that's a cartoon. No. Back then, every word you said became a thing in the air, and then it dissolved slowly. And back then, people really needed suntans. That guy is really white. A new quartering act. The original quartering act said Americans had to pay for British housing. This quartering act said, no, British live in your house. British live in your own house. Again, preventing plotting and scheming. And what was the other one? Planning. Plotting, scheming, planning. Very good. All Oh, and finally, maybe the one that made the Americans angrier than any other. You are looking at the law that created this thing called Canada. And you might think, well, big deal. Who cares? This law took away American rights. This law took away American rights. This law, take away, take away, take away, take away. And then there's this one. So imagine this. Your dad comes home, learns that you were a bad, bad boy, and so says, give me your phone. Right? So you got to give him your phone. And then he pulls out of his pocket the keys to the brand new car and gives it to your sister. Now, are you mad about the phone? But you gave her a car? Oh! God! Yeah! The phone. But the car? Phone. 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 Car. Right? I'm taking rights away from you. And by the way, here you go, Canadians. We're going to create a new colony called Quebec. Eventually it'll be called Canada. You people that live in the red area, you can go ahead and continue to speak. What language do they speak? French. Go ahead and keep being, what religion were they mainly? Catholic. Mainly Catholic. Go ahead and speak French. Go ahead and keep being Catholic. You're being nicer to them than us. At least we speak English. They're French. You're being nicer to the French than to us. We're your loyal subjects. Kind of. Right? We're in your family. Oh, that drove the Americans crazy. Oh, car. The right. So there is 20. Did I say there is? Let me fix this. There is a 20-minute time period remaining. Yeah, eat it. There are 20 minutes remaining. In that 20 minutes, you have access to technology. You can work on your Kias. You can work on your Blue Book essay revision. You could work on your trial prep. Remember, all of you are in a group where you're accusing primarily responsible for the Native American genocide. You can work on that. Are any of your partners in here? I realize that this is about half the group. So, but if there's someone else in here that you could be working on with, that's great. I've got you could be working on. I understand Lindy is having you write summaries.
Yes.
Correct? Okay, you'll be working on that if you want. Any questions? I'll put on a little Mozart. We're good to rock.
You guys remember in middle school when I did this speech on the and I dressed up like him?
I remember
And I
that.
curled my hair like yeah, and I curled my hair right here and we had to use like a ton of hairspray. And at recess I did cartwheels after I did my speech and they stayed all day.
That is incredible.
Is it still live? Yes. It just saw up my nose.
I don't know if you dress up to get extra credit for it.
I think that's it.
Oh yeah, I wore a crown.
Is it still live?
And she points out because there's supposed to be 5 minutes and 9 minutes.
We're still live here.
Seconds. I'm gonna go get my
Thank you.